Welcome to the Author Your Life podcast, where you can write a new script for your life and become the hero of your story. I'm your host, David McRae. You are the author of your life. Let's get started.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello, story changers, and welcome back to another episode of the Isolation Inspiration Interview Series. Our guest today is Christine Reffo. Christine is a business and energy coach, speaker, and entrepreneur. In her coaching practice, she supports women in the process of soul healing, finding their purpose, and starting a successful business. After 7 years working as a lead strategist for Fortune 500 companies, Christine dedicated herself entirely to entrepreneurship, energy, and mindset work. She has since started multiple companies, worked with a Silicon Valley startup, and is now doing what she loves most, helping women live life on their own terms. She's been featured in numerous virtual summits and podcasts related to personal development, self-care, and entrepreneurship, and this is another one on her list. In our interview today, you will learn what Christine has learned from the different cultures of Swiss bankers and skiers. That life is all about getting the balance between fun and purpose. How routine is key to regulating your energy. And that coronavirus is helping us to be more compassionate. You're going to learn this and so much more in this interview with Christine Reffo.
When I was growing up, I really thought I was going to be, a CEO or COO of some big corporation. And I went all in. I studied finance. I went straight into banking. I got a job right away. I didn't take a break. I was like working hard and, so driven and ambitious. And I went straight into strategy and was on such a career high. Like I was making six figures by the time I was 23. I got promoted every year, and everyone loved me, and management knew me, and it was like, wow, this is it, right? Like I'm basically already living what I wanted, and then 5.5 years later, I burned out, and I didn't even know what a burnout was. I didn't know what the symptoms were. So I just had this massive willpower and I just kept going and going. And sort of the big things, the big turning points for me were that I was forced to quit. And I only quit 8 months later because I was really stubborn, but I was actually forced to leave from, the physical and mental symptoms. And for me, that was like, I was losing everything. I was losing who I was. I was losing everything I thought I wanted. And everything I had worked so hard for, like this 5.5 years of working 70-hour weeks and getting home at midnight and all these things. And it's like, who am I? I left and I was like, who am I? Because my body wasn't working. I didn't know whether I was ever going to recover from burnout. That's what people tell you, but some people never come back from it. And I was 25 years old. So that was too young, like in sort of society's mind, that was too young for it. And when I quit, which was for me the hardest decision probably ever in my life, that was the hardest one I ever made. It was also, now I know, it was the best one. Like I had to leave and I had a lot of healing to do. So what came up is I didn't burn out because I was working too hard. I burned out because of the reasons why I was working so hard, and then you're like, now I understand what was truly going on, that there was this fundamental lack of sense of self-worth that was coming from childhood, and this lack of confidence and this constant feeling like I needed outside validation. And the irony is that when I burned out, I got a new boss who wasn't feeding me this validation. So I was starving while at work from the one thing I really needed, and that kept me going. so I left, and then I really took some years to figure life out, and I tried a lot of things, and I did a lot of healing. I suddenly was on the spiritual path, which is now so defining for me, and that was something I would have never expected. And that was when I started recovering who I was. Like, who was I meant to be? How did I end up in finance? Why was I in the bank for 5.5 years? It was suddenly like the autopilot had been switched off, and I could suddenly see. And that was what I still do now, and what really changed everything for me. And then what I did now is I really took both those elements, and I said, what did I learn in that first aspect of my life? I was a strategy consultant. I studied finance, and I took that, and I'm a business coach now. And then I took the second part of that story, and I was like, okay, I've learned how to work with mindset, with energy, how to do healing, and I put that into the same business. And that's what I help women with now, specifically because this is the help I needed, and this is the help I'm giving now. And that is not just a business, like that is actually who I am. Those are the things that I feel like my entire life prepared me for. It's the sort of the struggle that then becomes your purpose once you've transcended it. So that is kind of what happened in my life. And the burnout was really sort of that pivotal point in the middle that spun me in a different direction. Yeah. So that's really what made me. And I feel like it's been 30 years in the making.
What are some of the signs of burnout, these early signs that you kind of ignored for a while?
So I would say that everyone has different signs, but that is exactly one of the first questions that I would ask anyone to actually know in order to prevent it. What I had was I got really cynical. Like really overly cynical and angry. So whenever anything was happening in the office, you actually just look at your colleague and you just start ranting about it. You become critical. And so that's sort of a really early sign, is when you just start seeing everything very negatively. And then when it keeps going down the spiral, I was having cold sweats, like actually the body just oozing fear hormones and cold sweats. My eyes were everywhere. I couldn't focus my eyes anymore. And whenever someone asked me how I was, a very casual, Christine, how are you? With a little bit more like, how are you? I just start crying. So literally the line between the line of control of my emotions to actually just still press them down was really, really, really slim. And one thing that happened in particular for me, which is very uncommon, is I actually started yelling once at my boss. And this is the person who was seeking validation. So I was not someone to yell at anyone or to actually speak up, right? Which was part of the whole problem. But I actually yelled at my boss because the term that comes to mind is I literally just lost it. Like I had no willpower left, no force in me left to censor my thoughts. And so they actually poured out all that pent up anger that probably wasn't all his fault, but it just came out. And so that's one that was definitely very out of character. So I would also say acting out of character, and then sleep pattern, not falling asleep at night, feeling paralyzed when you want to get up. I started missing meetings. I couldn't get up myself. I would just pick up my BlackBerry and message and say, you can do the meeting without me. I'll be there an hour later. Which is, again, when you're on a career path, when you're, trying to be promoted all the time, that is a very, very big sign that you are in it. you are giving up, basically. Your body's giving up for you. Yeah. But what I can say is know your own symptoms. Like, what does it look like when you get stressed? And also actually to get informed, because I genuinely didn't know. I knew about the concept of burnout. I didn't know about what it would feel like or be like and how it would manifest itself. And had I known, I would have actually understood when to get help, because when you're too far in, you can't see it anymore. You close your horizon, you only see one thing, and you can't get yourself out of it by yourself when you're that deep.
You also spoke about how this path had been something that you were aiming for a long time, and it must have been, well, in fact, I think you said that it was a loss of identity when you realized that this wasn't the way that you'd seen it and it wasn't what it was cracked up to be. Can you talk us through a little bit more about this crisis of identity, if I can use that term, and what happened next?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was painful. So what I did and why it was so hard for me to leave was that my sense of who I was, and I really want to say my sense of self-worth, like, am I worthy, was attached to my position in that company and the salary I was making. And when I did burn out, I started working on it with a professional person, but I kept working. I stayed at my job, and I just, I stopped working till midnight. I worked till 7 p.m. So I actually dialed back how much I was putting into it, and basically came back to the level that everyone else was working at, because I was overdoing it all the time. And I knew I was going to quit, but I didn't know when. So I thought, okay, I'll sit it out. I'll wait that I'm okay, maybe 5 months down, maybe 6 months down. And I kept working at my past, actually, at the root, at the causes of this not being well, of this overdoing it, of this stress, because I realized I can't keep going right this way, because the way I felt inside of me was beyond anything I'd ever felt. It felt almost like torn open, scratched open, burning, pain, doubt, like everything at once. It's such an ugly feeling, and so I really don't wish it upon anyone, even though it can lead to something beautiful when you know how to get through it. But the moment itself is really, really ugly. And what helped me is I started working. I started working on myself. So why is this? What is this? And I had someone help me with this. And suddenly I feel like I recovered my true self enough, sort of the person I was meant to become before, in my childhood things got difficult, or before people told me how to be. I feel like when I had recovered enough, it suddenly clicked, and it did, like, oh, now I'm going to quit. And it was one day to the next, and it was this click in my head. And then it took me another 2 months to actually hand in my resignation, because they kept offering me other jobs. It's the typical thing, like, they do not want to let you go, which speaks for you, but you don't want it. So they really tested my willpower. I got, the really high people in management. They just kept offering me promotions and teams and entire regions of Switzerland to, to manage, which was my dream. That's what I had wanted, like, for all my time there. And so every single time it took like 2 weeks for me to see, do I want this? Do I not? And my mind always would be like, oh my God, yes. And then sitting with it just 1 week or 10 days, and then this deep sadness came back, and I'm like, I can't possibly keep being this way. And a really pivotal question that someone asked me when I was in the throes, I was crying so much, it was so difficult. Someone said, Christine, what are you most scared of right now? And my answer was that I walk out of this one building of this company and I walk into the next building to be just as miserable. And then he said, well, there you have your answer. And that made it so clear for me. And then I actually quit. I handed in my resignation. And I had no idea where to go. Switzerland is expensive. So I didn't want to travel, but I knew I had to leave. Because literally it's like, everyone says like, oh, I'm traveling. This is so fun. I'm like, no, I don't want to travel, but I can't be here because this is one of the most expensive countries on the planet. So I did what I call personal projects. What are the things that I always wanted to do, or the holidays I never wanted to come back home from? And so I went to go skiing in Canada and Japan, and just to ski. You know, my one thing was I just want to ski and not care about having to go back to work or cutting short, just skiing. And then my second one was I want to learn Spanish. So I actually went to Peru and took an intensive Spanish course. And then the third one was, and I really had those three things in mind. I did a 30-day yoga retreat, and it ended up being in Mexico, but it was about the yoga retreat. And out of those 30 days, 10 were silent meditation retreats. So those were the three big things I wanted to do. And once I had done them, I kind of gathered myself and I was like, okay, now thinking forwards, where is the next money going to come from? Where do I go back to? What is the new life I'm looking for? And it honestly took a lot longer than I thought it would take because I'm generally just impatient. But obviously everything that I did go through, you know, trying to build businesses that weren't working, trying to make money with a Silicon Valley startup wasn't working. So everything that wasn't working actually led me to be here now, where I can talk to people and say, if it's not working, I can tell you why. So it was I went through basically a process of learning for 2 years, trial and error, until I understood why is this not working? Like, how is a business really properly set up in terms of mindset and energy and strategy? And so so that was the entire moment of like leaving, doing the things I always wanted to do but couldn't, until I got sick of them. So I feel like I had to get them out of my system, and then actually being like, okay, looking forwards, what is it? What's the new me? Yeah.
This raises a question that I've been asking myself in the last couple months, and this conception or misconception of high achievers, high performers, call them what you will. And I always had a conception for a long time that high achievers do what they're able to do because they just persist. They keep working, keep grafting, keep putting in the hours until they get the end result. And I think that is true. But what I also notice now, and I'm becoming more aware of, is high achievers are also, they have an incredibly good sense of when to quit something. They don't waste their energy. They don't waste their resources. And this is a balance that I'm trying to find a little bit more for myself in my life. In your account, you've got this story of, on one hand, persisting with something, even though it wasn't right, and then eventually quitting. And then, as you said, going for these new projects and trying new things, trying something, quitting it, trying something, quitting it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any insight into how to find this balance between when to persist and when to quit?
You know, it's interesting because you give it yet again like a different spin, which makes me think that there are probably a lot of this different reasons why people are high achievers. Like I think I was always persistent, but I think my story came from, I was an insecure overachiever. I was coupled with being persistent. So I was overachieving because I was scared that someone would yell at me or would tell me I'm not good, and I would take it to heart. And so I was constantly making sure I'd leave nothing on the table. I'd be perfect, which is perfectionism, right? It's almost like it's the fear to make a mistake so often. And so that was my overachieving career. And so you come at it now with this different perspective of, you know, like this persistence and finding balance of when to move on to a better thing. So that's interesting, which makes me think that there are a lot of flavors to this, clearly, and you've just mentioned them as well. What I can say for myself is that I found that with actually working with myself and you know, even starting meditation or starting Tai Chi movements and actually sort of feeling myself again, because I went through some, you know, pretty bad things in childhood. You know, everyone has their story. Like I lost my mother at age 13, and you know, my dad wasn't all perfect, you know. So it's like everyone has their own stories, but you know, when you kind of lose yourself in this, I personally had to find my way back to myself. And by doing that, I then you know, because I clearly, before I did that, I didn't know when to quit. I was basically kicked out by my own body. It was like, Christine, we're not doing this anymore. Like, are you finally listening? So I lost my sense of what I needed, what was good for me. But with time, with doing those practices, I actually learned now when something doesn't feel right. And that doesn't mean I didn't waste time. You know, I did. I worked with the Silicon Valley startup for 4 months. And, you know, and then the signs were pretty clear. It'd be like, oh, you know, now these conditions are actually fulfilled, but you're still not going to get paid. And you're like, well, you know, this feels so off to me, and there's so much wrong about this. I'd rather move on than be here. And I think for me, this came from accumulating disappointing events until I finally learned to not get myself into them anymore. And, you know, and I really think so for me, I probably took me a little bit longer, but it was, you know, this happens once and then it happens again. And you're like, oh, why, Christine, why are you in this again? And then the third time you're like, oh, this kind of feels wrong already. Am I really going to get in there? And that's something that really taught me when to stop. And I've also noticed that because I meditate and I really have learned to listen to myself, I can tell now when something, even like my mood maybe drops. You know, it's something like, I just don't even want to get on a call with this person. Or something feels off about her. And then maybe I mention it and then this person goes off and like in this unexplicable way. And you're like, I was right, you know? So it's been, for me, it's really been a learning process of first it had to hurt, but then I learned to listen to myself and to my intuition. And that's about getting back in connection with yourself. Like, who are you? What's good for me? You know, do I have a gut feeling about this? And it's about slowing down a lot, right? Slowing down and yeah, like sort of connecting and listening in what's in you, the truth, your truth.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't get any bad feelings about me and
No,
this call. You talked about all these different places that you went to and all these different personal projects that you embarked on, some brilliant places in the world to go: Canada, Japan, Peru, Mexico. Can you share with us anything that you learned or picked up during these explorations?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the really interesting things to me that really changed a lot of my perspective and my thinking was that when I lived in Canada, where I actually went to go skiing, I ended up living there for a while because I met my boyfriend there. So I moved there to be with him. And it's a place that gathers a lot of seasonaires, people who move there to ski for a season and then they leave. And, you know, they're young and they're looking for adventure. And but, you know, some people get stuck there because they love it and they want to do one more season. And, you know, I was coming straight from banking in Switzerland. So like two cultures just clashing. And, you know, and I only once I was out of there again, I realized, first of all, that there's in general a different way to life. I was living in this banking bubble. Everyone I knew was a consultant, a banker, an insurance broker, and that everyone had a pretty polished life. And then I came to this super different lifestyle where no one cared about a career, no one cared about money, and everyone was just there to have fun. So it's almost like the pendulum, you know, you let it go from one side and it swings all the way to the other extreme until it finds its way in the middle. And so that was just not just a lifestyle, but it was also what I noticed also yet again something I didn't want. So it was like this was too slack. This was too, no goals, no ambitions other than just pure having fun and scraping by with money. So what I learned is not just that I didn't want that just the pure hedonistic, I'll just live in the now and do whatever I feel like doing today, doesn't give me the fulfillment I thought it would. It didn't give me happiness. The happiness that comes from growing, contributing, building something bigger, and there was none of that, and that made me basically just not feel good again. I was like, I thought I wanted this, but I had to learn that it wasn't. So it's almost like that direction then just put me back onto the third sort of another corner. It's like, oh, okay, I want to be here. I want to have a great life, and I want to have the freedom of time, the financial freedom, but I also want to actually contribute and do something that is good for other people, not just for me. And so that was almost like I had to go via a little detour, via hedonism and coming back. And so I think that's actually sort of the biggest thing I really learned, and that was so interesting, because I also saw all these people not caring even about finances, and then you realize, yeah, but that still doesn't make you free. And that isn't the way to go, because they couldn't even afford healthcare, or they would mend their own broken arms because they couldn't go to a doctor, but they had the best bikes, very expensive, and you're like, this is not how I want to be. And that actually just really put me back onto the track where I'm now, where I actually combine the two things. Like, can I have money and have a good life? And the answer is you can. And you really do, but you just have to start first believing in it, and then you build it, right?
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of a phrase that I can't stand, talking about this focus on fun, living in the moment, hedonism. The phrase "live every day as if it's your last." Yeah. I think that's such a dumb saying, because if you actually followed that, then we would all be addicted to drugs and riddled with STIs. Because if we lived every day as if we only had 24 hours left, we would be taking as much drugs as we could and having as much sex as we could. And that's just not a sustainable way of living. As you said, that there's no goals, there's no purpose, there's no wider meaning to it. So I think it is really important to find that balance. And I think that phrase just doesn't point to that balance at all.
But it's interesting that you bring that up, because someone smart made a continuation to that and said, but what about living like we're here forever?
Yeah, that also isn't good either. Yes, yeah.
Two extremes again, right? It's like, can we have a sane middle way?
Yeah. You were talking about very different cultures, being in the banking culture and being in the sort of the ski culture. And I think this raises a wider question of how we bring different cultures together, because I think at the moment in the world, we're experiencing a real divide that maybe actually now is becoming a little bit better with everything that's been going on. But going into the COVID-19 situation, I think we were becoming increasingly divided into our pockets and our echo chambers and our us versus them. From your experience of crossing the divide between extreme versions of cultures, do you have any insight into how we can better integrate as communities and as groups and as societies?
That's a really beautiful question. I actually grew up in, I don't even know, 5 or 6 countries. Like, I was born in Germany. I moved to Italy when I was 13. I moved to the Middle East when I was 16. I moved to Canada when I was 19, and then I moved to Hong Kong when I was 21, and then to Switzerland. So, I actually, cultural differences or just cultures are something that I've been so accustomed to experiencing, even culture shocks, just what is my own. I don't have this culture where people say, oh, I grew up drinking this, so I always drink this. I'm like, I don't even know, because I was always in a different place. But one other thing that before I'll go into the answer a bit more, what I notice is that people are from different groups, like whether they're now different countries or sort of pockets of groups that have, that share values, what I notice is that they are much more open to listening to each other than I personally thought. For example, like I have, when I was starting my business, I was quite scared at first. What would my employees, what would my colleagues back in the day think of me, right? Like, oh, energy coach, or oh, Christine is, like suddenly showing up with her big pictures on a website, and I was actually scared, and I had to get over that. And funny thing is, like 3 months later, I'm giving webinars right now to them where we have over 350 people signed up, and we had to increase the capacity of the platform because the interest was beyond what we expected it to be. And so what I've really learned is that, when there's a common theme to everything, and we are all humans, and we all have basic needs that are, a need for safety, which is bigger than ever right now, a need for certainty, a need for being, supported, a need for being loved. And that is when these needs go unfulfilled, that's when things go bad, right? That's when they're unfulfilled in your childhood. That's when things go bad. When people feel like any of their needs will go unfulfilled because of some other group, that's when they start, sort of putting out the elbows. So I think if we can come back to what unites us, come back to actually speaking to the person, not to the group, not to what they care about doing or how they care to live, but actually coming back to those fundamental needs that we all have right now. And that's exactly what I'm doing with my webinars right now. We're talking about mental health, which, I thought, do they really care? Well, they do. They really do.
Especially now. Yeah.
Especially now. And, how can I have a good day at home? And, and the topics are, is my job still going to be there tomorrow? Are my children going to be okay? Is my grandfather going to be fine, who's immunosuppressed? And, it's just like we all have the same fundamental needs. And if we manage to bring it back to that, like not concentrate on what separates us because we live in different places, have different ideas of what life should be, but come back what we humans need, like we're all here. And it's almost, I almost want to say it's so simple, right? Like, give love, give compassion, give understanding. And, you can hope that those who are open to it, they will take it. They will take the message. And if someone isn't quite ready, then they won't, but that's not up to us, right? You can go so far, you can open your arms and, share your message, share your love and your compassion. And, the people who are ready for it, they can come to you and accept that. And I feel like in that way, we can all help each other right now. Mm-hmm. And we are, right? Like, you're putting out your content and your, whatever you're organizing with the groups you're in. And I'm doing webinars and I'm doing, courses for free to deal with this. And I think that's how we're all showing up right now, which is those who have the resources should and really are showing up right now so much more to be there for those who can't deal with this right now in the best way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that point is really important, and this is something I've actually been experiencing for myself recently at the time of recording, and this might have changed a lot by the time this interview goes out, but at the time of recording, our Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he's just been taken into ICU in hospital. Now, not to be too political here, but I didn't vote for him. I don't like him, but I must admit over the past couple of weeks, I have been feeling real compassion for him. And especially now, like, I don't agree with him politically, but, nobody deserves to be going into ICU and to be that ill. And, his girlfriend is expecting their baby. And like, I've been feeling real compassion for him, which, to be honest, I have never felt for him before because of that political bias in terms of I don't agree with him politically. I don't like him as a person, therefore I can't feel compassion for him. But recently, and I think this is maybe the silver lining of this situation, is that we are starting to feel compassion and to be able to connect with people who perhaps we never could feel compassion and connect with before.
I think, I really think that's it. It's you suddenly see, oh, no one is exempt from this. It's not a class war. It's not, it has nothing to do with what you believe in. This is you in your physical body. The virus could get anyone. And so suddenly it's like, oh, we're all on the level playing field again, and we could all be affected by this. And I feel like suddenly it brings us all back down to who we really are. In the raw realness, that we, may not want to see, but this is who we are. And so I do think that this actually really breeds a lot more compassion, and also in like a desire to help. I think there's a big desire to help right now.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to shift gears a little bit, because you've been talking a lot about your experiences of burnout, stress, your current work with mindset and energy. And I don't feel we've really touched upon that yet. And I'd like to focus on it a little bit because, again, current circumstances, I think this is something that is really important, is managing our physical state, managing our psychological state. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about some of your work into overcoming stress, getting us into a good energetic place? Tell us a little bit more.
Absolutely. I love talking about this. Like, this is so I'm glad you asked. So what is really important right now, and what I really want everyone to take home from this podcast, is that it is so important to look after yourself right now. Like, you may have a family, you may have the children at home, but it is so important that you yourself come from a grounded, stable place. Because if you're not stable, let's say, you're the father or the mother, if you're not stable, your children feel it, everyone else around you feels it. And this is so much about self-leadership right now. This is a moment of change. No one chose it. Everything that we built up, the way we live our lives, fell away. Can't go to the bar, can't see your friends, can't go to the gym, kids aren't in school. So everything fell away. And it's so important right now to really step up the self-leadership and say, okay, I'm going to do, number one, I'm going to create certainty again for myself and for others, right? So the number one thing is routines. Have new routines in your day. Have a morning routine where you fill your own cup. And that's the thing of sort of mind, body, and soul. Meditate, journal, go outside, put your hands and feet on the ground, like soak up sort of the earth energy, and like of really feeling literally grounded. And that's sort of the routines that really need to be in place right now to, and even like expanded or strengthened, like whatever you need. If you need to meditate longer, do that. If you need to be outside 3 times a day instead of 1, like, do it. And so that's sort of the first thing, is sort of the certainty. And the same thing can also be translated to children, right? Like, give them a new day, give them a new plan for how their day is going to go. Because the longer we leave them in the state of like not understanding, what is this, how long is this going to go for, the more they worry about it and just stay in this state of like, I don't understand. And so I think it's extremely important to not just like give yourself a routine, but also schedule and plan the day and communicate it to the children, for example. And then the second thing is what I actually also gave in the webinar to the company that I was talking to, is you really want to rediscuss what the rules are at home and with everyone else. It's like, now you work from home. So who is allowed to walk into your office space or office corner? Who's allowed to talk to you, to call you? When can people reach you? When should they not reach you? All these things of like, this is a new situation for everyone. So the more you can rediscuss the rules and communicate them, the more everyone knows how to behave again. And that will just bring in the sense of certainty again, right? And be like, oh, yeah, no, David, yeah, not reaching him until 5 p.m. After that, he said it's okay, right? And it creates this like, oh, I know what I'm doing. So that is really important. And what I also brought in there is, when I talked about it, what I want to share is, boundaries. I know it's like, this is an evergreen, but if there's anything that right now is a little bit harder on you, is a little bit more difficult, Or you notice just right now you don't have the capacity for it. Like you need to set new boundaries, and that can be because there's more friction at home, or the children need to kind of learn a little bit how to behave in a different way right now. It's a thing of communicating what your needs are and insisting on that they be fulfilled, if obviously that's sensible, but also understanding obviously what the boundaries and the needs of other people are. And I think there's going to be this point of friction. It's like the changing of boundaries, like rubbing against each other and pushing and pulling, but everything has to settle into the new normal. And there's a way that can be accelerated, which is really by owning the process. Like, why is this happening? I'm going to learn from this. We're all are going to be fine, and we're going to get through this the best way we can. So that's sort of the mindset of it. And then going and be like, okay, I'm going to create certainty. I'm going to create rules. I'm going to create new routines that make sure that I am okay. And then when I am okay, I can help others be okay. And everyone has a different routine, so I don't really want to go too much into that. But I feel like this big piece is really create a space where everyone knows again how to be and behave.
Mm-hmm. What's the coronavirus situation like in Switzerland? Because every country is a little bit different, and every person's experience of coronavirus and the various isolation restrictions are a little bit different. Can you describe to us kind of what's going on for you and your country in general?
Right. Yeah, so we're at the point where all events were canceled that are 5 people or more. We're being told to stay at home, but we're still allowed to leave. So, we still have the freedom to actually go into, the forest or down to the lake, especially when we can avoid other people. We have a lot of cases. We're at the border to Italy. So, we have an Italian corner in Switzerland, Ticino. So there's a lot of commuting across the border. So we have a lot of infected cases. But what I really have to say, and I'm that made me very proud to live here, is the response from the government was phenomenal. The speed at which they brought liquidity to the businesses and the people that couldn't maintain their businesses at the moment, it was literally a 7-day turnaround. And they brought it to people by having them go to the local bank, and the government was putting down basically the security check. They were vouching for everyone who walked in and needed it, so the whole administration was delayed. So Switzerland really has what speaks for them every single time is they really know how to act fast and make sure that things keep working, and they keep it from down spiraling literally. So that is sort of the wider situation that's happening around us. People are working from home, those who can, but you also everyone who's in those essential roles, like they're called now, they're working. You do have someone outside the supermarket who makes sure everyone keeps a distance of 2 meters.
Yeah.
But then in the supermarket, everyone mingles.
Oh.
So but then like they're really doing a lot, which is amazing. For me personally, honestly, like my situation hasn't changed that much. The biggest change was that the mountain resorts are closed, which is a very big hit for Switzerland because it's a ski country,
Yeah.
right? Like the Alps. So that is pretty big for the country to take that hit. And me as an avid skier, that was the most immediate change in my life. But I work on my laptop. I can work from home. My boyfriend is now working from home, but his company is in the research field, which is now probably going to see an uptick. So we are, thank God we are okay. And I know a lot of people also in my immediate surroundings who have been needing the support of the government, and it's there. So the economy keeps going, which is important right now for everyone to still have money to still purchase, to still maintain the wealth that was created.
Mm-hmm. You've talked about a few strategies or helpful principles that we can adopt at the moment. Do you have any more insight into how people can get through and overcome the current crisis?
Yeah, it's funny you asked this because we're actually I'm literally talking about this tomorrow with the group. So I think a really big thing is to look at this entire situation with the most positive outlook that you can. You know, it is okay if emotions are coming up right now, because, you know, we sit at home, we don't have all these distractions of, you know, I'm always busy, I'm running around, I go to do some sports, I'm away for the weekend. Like you're just sitting there. So old stuff may come up, and also especially the intensity of the situation around us, right? Like there's collective fear, people are locking themselves up, and there's this feeling of unease in the air. And you know, we're not immune to this, we're all somewhere connected, we feel it, we're in it. So the first thing would be like, if there's something coming up right now, if, you know, people are not feeling quite as okay, that is very, very normal. And I think the first thing is to accept that, and to accept it, and to be compassionate with yourself. And you know, people aren't used to it often. You know, not everyone works with their emotions, not everyone knows what this means, but it's so important to be with it, and to know that this will pass. You know, there's thoughts are very real, but they're not the reality. So, you know, there's something come up of like, I'm lonely, no one loves me, this is tragic, this is never going to end. Those thoughts exist, but they're not the reality, right? That's the sort of trying to make sense of the future with something in the past that clearly, you know, didn't make you feel all right at some point. So I think that's really one of the first things, is to understand that if things are coming up now, that's very normal. It's almost like the space is created for it, for this to come through. And then what I would really suggest is to cultivate some sort of, you know, positive mindset if you can, and resourcefulness about, okay, you know, there's always this post-traumatic growth, like from all situations. So it's like, okay, how can I almost backtrack and say, what's the pre-traumatic possibility of this? You know, like, what am I about to learn from this? How can I go into this and show that, you know, use everything I've always learned to really make this the best I can, or to really learn from this? If emotions come up, how can I learn how to really work through them and be with them more? You know, whatever it is, and just go into it and be like, you know what, this is my moment, this is coming up for me, it's clearly the time for it. Like, oh, I have financial anxiety right now, where is this from? Is this the first time I feel financial anxiety, or did I have this at some prior point? And really understand that, you know, there's a lot of growth in the situation for all of us, and we will all be happy once it's over, but we will actually come out as stronger individuals, and as a strong collective, obviously. So I really want to kind of stress this, of this resourcefulness, this growth that we can already foresee. And then the other two things that are really important right now, sort of openness and this connection with ourselves. And, you know, this openness is, be open with what's coming up, be open to others. Can you give others space to talk to you? You know, does anyone need your help right now? Do you need anyone else's help right now? And it can be something very small, it can be something more substantial, but actually being open and honest enough to even talk about it. Because there's this stigma around, you know, like mental health, or, oh, emotional, not okay, or, oh, what, you're not doing well, I'm just going to hang up. It's like, no, you know, like, how can we all be there for ourselves first and foremost? How can I be there for myself right now? What do I need? And then also do that same, give that same like attention and that same care to other people. And I think that's the most important thing right now, is sort of the attitude, the openness, and then also cultivating that connection, whether it is the connection with yourself right now that you need. What did I always love doing? You know, let's say you're actually not struggling right now and you're actually feeling fine and you have more time. What did you always want to do? Did you want to start a business? Did you want to learn an instrument, a language? You know, there are so many resources right now that are just given away for free to help people. like, can you pick up one of them and actually learn something new? Then this is your time, right? So there's this thing of like, not everyone is suffering. Some people may be really loving it, right? Like, not the overall happening, but like being at home, or even like having the time with their family again. And then also connecting with others, obviously, reach out to anyone you haven't heard. Like, everyone right now messages and says, I hope you're safe. It's like, yes, I am, thank you. So who are you thinking of right now that you really want to be safe? And just pick that one up again, because it just shows you care, and it's so beautiful to talk to those people again.
Something you mentioned there when you were talking about mental health, and it's actually just made me wonder if there's any time for mental health issues to be acceptable. It seems to be this time, and I wonder if something that comes out of this is we finally get over the stigma of mental health. We've been attempting to get over it for a while, and just as you're saying that, I thought maybe this is actually the catalyst where people recognize it's okay to talk about struggling and to talk about mental health problems that they might have.
I really think it is. This is going to bring us forward so much, whether it is about people working from home when they were never allowed to. Suddenly the company can't be like, oh no, we really need you to be in the office. I'm like, hold on, that, what happened the past months? I didn't have to be there. So I think like it really brings us forward. And yes, especially in a time where struggling now is so accepted, because it's almost like, if you are, well, that is so normal. The government is dealing basically with struggle at the economic level. Like, you have to close down your business, you have to you have to lock yourself up at home. Are you going to be okay doing that? Of course you're not. You're not. And some people live in a city, they don't have access to nature. Like, you're not okay. And so I do feel like, because it now is almost like a blanket that everyone has to acknowledge, and it's like, am I okay? Oh, I am. Well, that's good, but is everyone else okay? It's almost this like, like, it would be normal if you were not quite that okay right now.
Yeah.
And I think people will realize that they will be a lot better off once they actually start talking about it to each other, and creating containers even at work, for example, to talk about this more. Like, I'm struggling, I have my kids at home now, I have to work, I have my kids, what are you doing, what can I do? And sort of pool resources. And I think it's a change.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there are any opportunities present in the current situation?
There always are. I do think so. I think, one really big thing I'm already seeing just in the business that I'm in, right, in business coaching, mindset and energy coaching, is that people are actually reaching out to pivot their business. Can I go online? Can you help me to go online? And it's like, of course, And I do think that this kind of business is the future, because we had technology to, as I lived it, in banking, almost like as a tool that put us in shackles even more. You had to be available 24/7. At home on your BlackBerry, you had to reply to emails and everything. And now for me, it's like, wow, the freedom of technology. Like, I can work remotely, I can still do business without having to physically meet people, which is not something I was looking for, but that's exactly what is needed now. So I think the opportunity is really for a lot of businesses, to small or big, but especially so I'm talking about individual people, because those are the ones that I mainly work with, is how can I change this and actually in the future create more freedom for myself? If I don't rely on the physical thing anymore, what is the possibility of this? Can I work remotely in the future? Can I be wherever I choose to be? And I'm not saying everyone always wants to travel, but we all know the advantages of, being able to work just from a computer. And so I think this is really one big thing, one big opportunity is for businesses now to go online or start their online businesses. Mindset coaches, energy coaches have a really big opportunity right now to share the tools, to work with anxiety and stress, like that's exactly what is needed right now. So there's definitely a really big change in what is demanded right now, and there's an uptick. Virtual summits, there's so much where people now share their messages, and conferences go online, and so I think there's a really big rise on the whole online platform softwares, coaching, that kind of area. And then I do think the other big opportunities, like you said, is can we finally start talking about emotions and mental health? Because we all have emotions, and for some reason, so many people, especially men, aren't meant to talk about it. Can I just say that I'm sad, without being bullied for it? So I think it's the best opportunity to actually talk about this and make it normal, and give everyone permission to actually, like let it out, let it go, be okay with not being all right all the time. And so I think that is really the other massive opportunity for us, is to learn who we are again, and learn what's going on inside of our own worlds.
I really like the distinction you made talking about technology in particular. I think humankind has this fascinating tendency to innovate and shoot itself in the foot at the same time. So we industrialized and we're like, wow, we can create all this energy. And then we found out, oh crap, we're kind of killing the planet as we're doing this. We created technology. We can connect anywhere at any time. Well, now we've got a problem with switching off and deconnecting. And I think for the last sort of decade, we've had this double-edged sword of social media, where on one hand, social media is an incredible vehicle, but on another hand, social media is this often very negative influence at the individual level and then at the collective level as well.
Yeah.
And I like the optimism in maybe we'll finally work out how to use our current technology properly as a result of what's going on.
Yes, I do. There are these counter trends too right now on social media, people saying, this is what it looks like, but this is actually the reality behind it. So I think people are getting sick of it. People are getting sick of this fake, the fake Instagram world. And Facebook, I think, has probably also changed a lot. Like I use a lot for Facebook groups that are associated with certain programs, but like I'm barely on it to post or, so I think everything is kind of changing as we learn how to use the stuff. And obviously we're also a different generation, right? Like what is the youngest generation doing right now? Like 10-year-old? I personally don't know. But there are counter trends. So I think as we have matured with technology, our use of it is maturing as well. So I really see that in myself. I see that in others, and so that is very reassuring, definitely. But I do think that the freedom that technology can still give us hasn't fully been exploited. Like having the freedom to switch off. That is one of them. But when I have a business that is online, do I have to be online all the time? No. Can I be? Yes. And I think that's kind of I think where we come back to finding this balance of like being an overachiever or a high achiever, and then actually pulling yourself back again. Because if you have your own business, I notice those tendencies come through a lot more again, because no one tells you now when you are done, when is it enough, right? So I see, and then you have to tell yourself, when do I switch off? Because social media is made to be addictive. So when do I decide that my time off the screen is valuable and important and productive? More productive, arguably, than the time you maybe are on the screen. So I think we're kind of closing the circle with this as well, is this self-discipline and self-leadership. Technology can free you, but it is not everything is built to free you up.
Yeah.
Right?
As you said, Christine, I think we have closed the circle really nicely on everything that we've been talking about today. And so far in our discussion, I've been the one asking the questions, but I'd actually like to give you the opportunity to ask the final question today. Is there a question that you think that you want to ask the audience today, or you think the audience should be asking themselves?
Very good. Yes, I would love to offer a question. And yeah, so what I would love to ask is, what is the best way for me right now to lead myself through this and to lead others through this with me? So who can I be right now for myself and for others? That would be my question.
Well, Christine, for our listeners today who have resonated with your story, with your ideas, with the work that you do, and they want to find out a little bit more about who you are and what you do, where would you be directing them to go?
Right, to my website. So I'm under christinereffo.com. That's just my first name and last name without dot in there, christinereffo.com. Or on Instagram, they can also find me yet again. It's, /Christine.Reffo. So there's that little dot in there, or just through my name, obviously. So I'm on Instagram, on my website. They can also get in touch with me. And I'm always open and happy if anyone wants to reach out, to have a chat, to reflect on what was said on this podcast. I would absolutely love to hear from you. So do come in, do message me, and I'll be more than happy to engage in whatever discussion you want to bring up.
Christine, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and I'd like to particularly acknowledge your warmth. I feel there's a real warmth about your character and the way that you come across, and I'd like to thank you for bringing that into our conversation today.
Thank you so much, David. It's been so beautiful. I really appreciate our conversation and your reflections and the space you gave me to to talk about my story and everything that has been going on. So thank you.
To continue to help you through this isolation period, I've decided to open up my Author Your Life Academy for free for the next 3 months. Author Your Life is my online educational community where you can access training sessions, workshops, and question and answers, and connect with other people around the world who are going through this situation and trying to make the best of things. The Academy normally costs $27 a month to subscribe, but for the next 3 months, I'm going to open that up for free. Essentially, you're getting a 3-month free trial of the platform. To access the Author Your Life Academy, go to authoryourlife.org/academy, and when prompted, enter the code CORONA in block capitals. Yes, what else would the code be? CORONA in block capitals, and that will take your $27 subscription down to $0 for the next 3 months. The Academy is where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my content during this difficult time. It's where I'm trying to bring people together to help and support each other as we go through this period of isolation, of fear, of uncertainty. I hope the Academy is something that will be able to help you too during this situation. So if you want to come in and join us, as I said, go to authoryourlife.org/academy, and when you sign up, enter the code CORONA, and that will give you 3 months for free. It's my gift to you to try and help and support during this time as best I can. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it hugely if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. With your review, please be as honest and detailed as you can be, because with honest and detailed feedback, that helps me to adapt and grow this podcast to most serve you, the listener. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you aren't going to miss any of the future episodes that we've got lined up for you. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story.